Welcome to On the Couch, a regular catch-up where we discuss the issues facing marketing, media and advertising and hopefully provide some solutions. Today I'm joined by Mark Jones, Chief Storyteller and CEO of Filtered Media and co-host of the podcast The CMO Show. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
Mark, it's great because we actually caught up when I saw you doing the live version of the CMO show at Mumbrella 360.
Yeah, it was a blast.
Yeah, it's turned out well. I haven't actually heard the podcast.
No, it came out really well. Our guest was the CMO of Fairfax, Michael Laxton, and it was his first time out speaking about the brand strategy behind Fairfax. So we had a great time.
Now, storytelling, which is Filtered Media, is all about helping brands with their story. Why do you think story is such a hot topic in marketing?
So it's interesting time in brand storytelling. This is an idea that's actually been around for a really long time. You mentioned Filtered Media, and our tagline has been for some 8 years now, telling your story brilliantly. So the promise we make to marketers is that we will help you execute really well against this idea. Why has it become so interesting? I think there's two things that are driving it. You're familiar with the old adage that 50% of my marketing works, I just don't know which 50. That's a legacy idea in marketing. Well, today I have a view that it's both 50. We want both 50%, in other words, 100% of my marketing to work for me, and I want to measure it. So that's one driver. The second is fragmentation. We have so many channels, so many different ways of communicating with our customers and potential customers, we don't know what we should do. And so storytelling has great appeal because it unites the whole landscape.
But what about brand story? Because, you know, to be honest, a lot of brands have really boring stories.
I actually disagree. I think every brand has an amazing story. We just haven't told it well. And I'll give you, a couple of examples. It doesn't matter who you are, and actually this applies to us as people. We think we're boring at some level, perhaps some of us do. But really,
speak for yourself.
But if you go into part of your history, there'll always be some element that was either a triumph over adversity, a determination to get through, some sort of growth story that is actually quite interesting to somebody somewhere. I think we tend to diminish those ideas and think, well, maybe nobody's interested in my story. And so that actually applies to brands as much as it does to people.
But do you think it's because often people think of brand story, and especially marketers think of brand story as being the sell story rather than the engage story?
I think it's interesting if we come into this from a brand strategy perspective, which has been, if you like, a long-running function of advertising agencies, is engaging with the C-suite and what is your brand, what's the purpose of your brand, why do you exist, and who are you trying to reach. If you interrogate that brand story really well, then it becomes a question of how do I tell it and to whom do I tell it? And the opportunity now is to say, well, if I can tell that in a really authentic way that is relevant to the audiences that I'm interested in, now we've got something to work with.
So what do you think makes a good brand story? Because I have to tell you, I've seen some shockers.
There is still this confusion between a push, sell message and a brand story. And the way that I would define brand storytelling, actually, there's kind of a simple version and a long version. The simple short one is it does what it says on the tin. It's a brand telling a story. The long version is that we have brands that seek to engage consumers in their hearts and minds in a story that's both authentic and immediately relevant. So to unpack that for a second, how can you tell a story that connects in an instant way and it's believable? And it also is in sync with that brand strategy that I mentioned, because people pick it straight away. It's either a message that's aligned with what I know the brand is about, or it's not.
So it has a lack of integrity because it doesn't ring true.
Right. And I'll give you a classic example. You might have seen there's an amazing campaign going on in Brazil at the moment. Coca-Cola has done this thing, and it's there's actually a slur against the gay community over there, and it's my Coke, or that Coke is a Fanta, and it's been part of popular culture. Well, Coke's taken that and they've turned it around to make it a positive thing. What they said is they've actually filled these cans of Coke with Fanta, right? And the line is something like, this Coke is a Fanta, and with the tagline, so what? So they've actually taken the negative power out of what's been a pop culture thing, and it's actually been aligned to a positive message. Now, interesting thing about that is that that's changed the whole conversation in that country, and it's actually been aligned with, if you look at the history of Coke as a brand, is being inclusive. They've got a great story about equality and consistent messages along those lines. So that's the brand piece. But then you've got this story which has gone not just through the product, it's through all the different channels, so earned media, paid media, shared media, social, and so on, content pieces. So you have this entire ecosystem around a brand story, and suddenly you've got a really interesting, cohesive message, regardless of which channel.
So that's the role you see brand story playing, is allowing you to create a consistent presence in people's perceptions, conversations, by being across all channels and all platforms.
Right. So, and in marketing theory, we'd call this integrated marketing communications, and it's an old idea, but I think it's an old idea that's being reinvented, if you like, with the discipline of really amazing storytelling.
So why is it that a lot of brands fall back on, like when they think of brand story, they, we were founded on this date and then we did this, and which is really not a story, it's just a list of facts.
Yeah.
Why is that the default?
There's an interesting kind of, if you think of the Venn diagram of the brand and the customer and what they're interested in the middle there is a middle ground that rings true, that has that resonance. And it's very easy to play it safe and just talk about yourselves. We all know that you need to be customer centric, to be thinking about their world. So finding that space, that's the hard work.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and insights on brand stories.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on the couch. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay tuned for more On the Couch coming soon.